We have here with us our former Commission member, Mr. Manil Jayesinghe, who is also heading the SEC-CSE Joint Committee for New Products. This joint committee has been tirelessly working to fast-track these new products to the capital market of Sri Lanka. So today we'll be discussing about these new introductions which are planned to be introduced to the capital market of Sri Lanka. There is no better person than Mr. Manil Jayesinghe, being the head of this joint committee, to enlighten us on these new products.
Main purpose is that the SEC and the CSE in developing the Sri Lankan capital market is trying to bring in many of the products and offerings that most mature markets have. In our road to development, we have to bring these in order to enhance the availability of the mechanism for investors to invest in companies and for companies to raise money. So, the SEC and the capital markets is basically an intermediary in doing this. So, in order to do this, we have to introduce different types of products which captures the needs of the market. So, today the market has got highly segmented. So, you have investors who have specific needs, say for example like ESG. So, there are certain investors who want to invest in green projects. So, then we have to bring in instruments which cater to those needs. So, that is what we are now doing. Then also we need to increase the depth as well as the breadth of the market. So, in order to develop that, we are introducing some of these products so that we give greater flexibility to the investors and greater flexibility also to the companies, because companies now are not restricted in only raising money through equity and maybe some limited debt. Now they have different instruments so that they can go to the market and tell the investors your money is used for this particular type of project. So that deviation and variation is being brought in now, and hopefully that will help to grow our capital markets and our journey towards becoming a globally renowned capital market. So, this will also help the liquidity in the market, because once again you are giving opportunity for investors. So, normally now if you are an investor who has money and you want to invest in, let us say debt instruments, today debt instruments are not widely used. So, then what is the option you have? You have to go and put in a bank and put in a deposit. Today you are giving, so the bank in turn will then lend money to the companies. Now you are giving the investor directly to go into the companies. So, it should improve the liquidity in the market by giving better market opportunities to the investor. Same way with the companies. Now, companies, if they want to raise money for a particular project, you have two ways. One is either you have to raise equity, or now to some extent now the banks are now raising debt. The other option is to go to the bank. So, here by having these flexible instruments that have been offered, the entities also now can go to the market, as well as they can also structure what they want. Now, equity means is perpetual, right. So, today if you want money for 5 years, you can issue a bond, but if you want money for a project that is let us say green, you can issue a bond, but then that bond will be the normal bond holders. It won't attract those capital which certain people want to invest only in certain projects. So, we are giving that flexibility. Through that flexibility, it will definitely improve the liquidity in the market as well.
In the present, the global capital markets are increasingly adopting ESG into its operations. What are the new products planned to be introduced in relation to ESG?
So, if you look at ESG, there is a host of new products that are coming out in the market. So, such as green bonds, blue bonds, sustainability bonds. So, a whole bunch of instruments are available in order to facilitate this whole ESG equation. So, in Sri Lanka, we have already taken assistance from ADB and developed a framework in order to introduce these bonds, which for two things. One is these frameworks are developed based on established frameworks in the other parts of the world. In addition to that, we have also considered the fact that by opening these markets out with these new instruments, we are able to cater to different types of investors, and also for companies which which requires to raise money for these environmental friendly projects and investments. So, through this mechanism, I think the SEC and the CSE is in the process of formulating the rules now, and very soon we will introduce these products to the market.
When it comes to short selling, efforts have commenced to enable regulated short selling through securities borrowing and lending. How would this impact the market?
Once again, in a capital market, it's all about the types of instruments and the mechanisms that are available for market participants, that is the investors as well as the entities that require to raise capital, to interact with a greater degree of flexibility in order to operate in the capital market. So, one of those instruments that require, or one of those mechanisms that require, is the short selling and stock borrowing and lending, which has to get introduced, and this has been, I think, in the pipeline for a long time. Due to various reasons it has not come out, but now we have enabled this very fast. Currently the infrastructure is being developed in order to sort of give rise to an implementation of this product. So, very soon it will be done, but this has also been facilitated by our introduction of DVP, which happened, I think, in 21, and also our transition to CCP, which will happen, I believe, in time to come. So, with that, with regulated short selling will be introduced very soon into the market, which will again enhance the I would say the width of the market, whereby more and more instruments are available for market participants to operate in our capital markets.
With the introduction of repo transactions on listed corporate debentures in the over-the-counter platform of the CSE, how would this initiative benefit the market? And what can you say about the latest status of this initiative?
This product has already come into the market now. But again, the importance of this is, one of the things is that the Sri Lankan bond market was not very active. We had a bond market, but it was not very active. So, the repo comes if there is an active bond market, and one of the issues we had is probably on the liquidity side and the tradability of these bonds. So, in order to facilitate that and to ensure liquidity, this repo window has been now established, so that among knowledgeable investors, they can transact through the repo window. One of the reasons why the repo was not was very careful is the bond markets, you need to be careful, because sometimes the impression created in the bond market is that once you invest, your capital is safe, but in the secondary market your capital can vary due to discounts offered in the market depending on the interest rates in the market. So, that is why this is restricted to knowledgeable investors and not to everyone, but through the repo window now, I think there will be great activity in the bond markets.
Next, we go to perpetual bonds. How is the progress of introducing perpetual bonds?
So, perpetual bond as a product is very close to a equity instrument. It's a bond, of course, it's payable on at some date, but it is not payable before the what I call the maturity, which will be the at the end of company's life cycle. So, that's why it's called perpetual bonds. So, with the perpetual bonds is that there is certain risks involved, which means that depending on the market interest rates, your bond value can vary. So, that is why this instrument took a bit of time to be introduced, so that to ensure there is proper knowledge of the investor and the protection of the investor. So, now I think the SEC and CSE has developed the necessary rules to give that protection to the investor, but at the same time to enable the trading and transacting of these instruments.
Thank you, Mr. Manil Jayesinghe, for enlightening us. My colleague will take it over from here.
What are the new initiatives planned to support the assurance of debt and equity securities by state-owned enterprises?
I think debt securities has been there by SOEs to some extent. CEB and various entities have raised some debt in the market. The issue now is, as you know, with the current economic scenario, the government is, one of its strategies is to sort of peopleize or put the SOEs into the market. So, one of the key areas where when it puts into the market, one of the facilitators would be the stock market. So, if we have the necessary platform in order to facilitate these transactions, in order for the government to raise that capital, is what we are looking at. So, currently there is discussions going on with the various committees that are entrusted with this task, so that the CSC can bring in that platform and the SEC can bring the rules in order to protect the investors and to smoothly facilitate the what I call disposal of these SOEs in the market and in a fair manner. So, currently it is being done, and I think in the next few weeks or months a mechanism will come out how the CSC and the SEC can, the CSC can be used as a platform to raise capital or sell these government assets.
How will the listings of the state-owned enterprises impact the market capitalization of CSE?
So, clearly the market capitalization will grow tremendously. So, for example, today we have over 300 odd listed companies. So, if these now, you know, in the Sri Lankan economy, the SOEs are the biggest. So, some of these SOEs are large. So, if you take for example, Sri Lanka Telecom is large, but that is of all at the moment also in the market. But if you look at some of these other SOEs like Sri Lanka now activity, they will be very large. So, one of the things that will happen is when these large SOEs come to the market, automatically the market cap will go up, right, because the investors will come in and the market value of the market will go up. So, that is one issue. Even though they have only identified about 6 entities, I think, to be Sri Lanka Insurance. So, all these are now Sri Lanka Insurance is the largest insurer, one of the largest insurers in the market. So, that one comes into the market, means market cap will go through the roof. So, that is why it is important for these to come in, and unfortunately Sri Lanka is an economy, though we say private sector, bulk of the large institutions are government. So, the private sector is not necessarily a large segment. So, by the government now deciding to put this into the market cap will definitely improve, and also it will also attract the private capital into the businesses. So, currently what is happening is this private capital to some extent goes into the banks, and then the banks give loans, right. So, here it will directly go into the market.
May I know what are the new products which would contribute towards getting more foreign inflows?
So, I think the CSC has been working on this for a while, where we are looking at different multi-currency boards, where we can attract foreign investors into those boards and attract foreign investments into Sri Lanka. This will give opportunities for local entities to raise capital, either debt or equity, in different currencies other than Sri Lanka rupees, so that we also facilitate foreign investors to come into our market. So, that process has happened. We have got the Ministry of Finance approval, and now various other regulatory agencies like Central Bank and all these things we have been working on. So, hopefully that also within the next, we have been working on this for a while. So, very soon that also will come out into the market, and thereby local companies can or will be able to raise capital in debt and equity instruments in different currencies other than LKR.
So, what are high yield corporate debt securities and how will they impact the market?
So, high yield corporate debt is also a little bit higher risk than the normal debt, right. So, that is why it is high yield. So, the question is that when we bring in these instruments, we need to have the necessary framework in order to protect the possible investors. So, these are, say for example, if you had a AAA corporate debt, that is investment grade debt. then an entity which is, let us say, CCC, which is below investment grade, that will be high yield. So, but it has certain risks. So, the question is developing rules to protect investors within that risk framework. So, investor must know what the risks that they are taking, but within that framework we must have a mechanism to protect our investors. The second part is that we must ensure that a smooth operation of the market. So, those two are the primary functions. So, with that we will be introducing the high yield corporate bond, but I think in the first phase these will be restricted to knowledgeable investors, because these have a high risk, because we do not want investors, the retail investors and people like that, to burn their hands without knowing. So, because of that there will be some protection brought in, some rules will be brought in as to who can trade in these instruments, and generally it will be for the knowledgeable investor.
What are the efforts taken to introduce XBRL reporting platform in Sri Lanka?
So, as you know, the world is moving on, and I think COVID really pushed us to the electronic age, and whereby we are now increasingly reducing the paper trail. That is one. The other thing is then we needed to come up with a reporting and a dissemination platform which will help the investors and the users of this information to analyze it and do various things, and also to get this information across to investors. So, worldwide this platform called XBRL is being used in various countries. This XBRL enables people to get information, analyze this information. So, then you have to have this information in a standardized form. There has to be certain rules around it. There has to be certain methods of putting this information in. Anyone can't put anything they want. There has to be some degree of credibility into that. So that whole environment or the ecosystem has to be created within that. So, at the moment I think the SEC is in discussion with the Institute of Chartered Accountants, who is dealing with financial reporting anyway, in order to see how XBRL can be adopted in Sri Lanka and move towards it. This will also help in today's context, because we are trying to move away from paper. Today you see annual reports which are like 300, 400, 500 pages. We are cutting many trees, as it were. So, how we can disseminate that information to the investing community and the analysts and people like that in a form that will help them to do their analysis plus convey this information. So, that is the platform is XBRL. So, we are, I think, now in the process of seeing how this can be implemented in Sri Lanka. This initiative is nothing new. Sometime back also it came, but it didn't get off the ground. But this time it is, we are very convinced that it will, and also what's happening around us I think is helping the push. So, but it will happen. Exactly, digitalization, as well as the fact that now today paper cost is very high. So, companies to spend money on this is it's very expensive, and then when this information goes to, let's say, analysts or even normal shareholder, they have to take this information to analyze it. So, then you have to either key it in or have some method of putting it in, right. XBRL will facilitate all that. So, automatically you can download that information in that form and then start with your system also, but it will be in a standardized form. Otherwise, if different people start putting the information in different ways, exactly. So, there won't be any consistency in this. So, XBRL will ensure that consistency is maintained.
What are the key new products or initiatives which will be considered under phase 2 when it comes to introducing Islamic capital market products? As I recall, Sukuk has been introduced in Bursa, Malaysia.
So as you know, worldwide there is a growing trend in different types of investors requiring different investment opportunities. So we have, meaning at the end of the day, the world has today gone into assume that we all fit into a nice neat box, which doesn't happen. There are different variations. So Islamic products are like that. So there is a community which would normally not invest in the debt market, the bonds, right, because they don't necessarily believe in interest and things like that. So therefore, there has to be capital market products that come out to attract that investment crowd. So one of the products that we are talking about is this instrument called Sukuk, where we have now got ADB assistance in order to develop the necessary framework so that we can issue these Sukuks in the market. So that will again help the investors who believe that that is a product for their investment opportunities, and give those investors greater opportunity to invest in the capital market. And at the same time, the capital market opens out another source of funding for them to carry out their activities.
I think Bursa Malaysia also have sukuk.
Yes, because Malaysia being a predominantly Islamic country, it will have, Middle East has, but even in our case, we do have quite a sizable community, which at the moment that capital is out of the capital markets, because they have no other place to invest, right? They can't invest in, so for example, they can't invest in a treasury bill because it has an interest in it. So the sukuk is an alternate product which can raise that capital.
There are several crowdfunding platforms available. So how is CSE and SEC going to facilitate equity crowdfunding platforms in Sri Lanka?
So again, it's the flexibility to the market that we are bringing. So today, with the proliferation of the internet and various things like that, there are different methods to raise money. So crowdfunding is one such mechanism, where through that mechanism, you are able to attract a large number of people who wants to invest in companies. So it has benefits from both sides. From an SME side, it has benefits that you are directly going into the larger market, and from the market side, the investors have an opportunity to invest in these companies. Otherwise, they would have to come through a formal process. So crowdfunding, how should I say, enables that environment, and of course, by enabling that environment, we also have to be careful to make sure that we give protection to the investors, we give protection to the people who are using this money, and basically ensuring that there is a smooth functioning in the marketplace and there is trust in that marketplace. So that's where the SEC will come in and make sure that there are necessary checks and balances to facilitate the smooth functioning of these products. So crowdfunding is one area we are looking at, because today we are living in a digitized world. A lot of transactions happen in a digitized world. It doesn't happen in the formal world. So this is to facilitate that, in order to raise money from the general, what I call the general public or the general people out there, and at the same time the entities, the ability to use those funds for their activities. So we are facilitating that.
There have been several efforts taken to introduce derivatives into the Colombo Stock Exchange. So may I know how we are going to facilitate when it comes to introducing structured warrants?
So the SEC has been very careful in facilitating these products, because sometimes we are getting pressure even on the cryptocurrencies and all that, why we are not introducing crypto exchanges and all that. But we have to realize Sri Lanka is relatively a small market. We are 22 million people. Our investing community is not necessarily very large. So we need to strike a balance. So in going towards derivative, we are introducing these structured warrants. So which will be like a acid test, also testing the market, and also developing the market. You have to develop risk management techniques when you are using derivatives. That won't happen overnight. So by introducing structured warrants, that will lead towards this whole development to an exchange traded derivative. So we are slowly introducing this, and we will watch and see how the market operates, and bringing the necessary checks and balances to ensure the protection of the investors, protection of the companies, as well as the smooth operation of the market.
Thank you, Mr. Manil Jayesinghe, for your time and effort in this initiative. Thank you all for watching our program, and stay tuned for more.